There is a rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea where nothing grows and nothing moves except wind and gulls. No trees, no rivers, just black volcanic stone baking under a sun that does not care who you used to be. An old man lives there, alone. He was young once, young enough to walk beside a carpenter's son through dust roads in Galilee, young enough to watch that same man die on a Roman cross and somehow, 3 days later, stand in front of him again, breathing. He was young enough to believe that the worst thing that could ever happen to him had already happened, and that nothing after resurrection could frighten him again. He was wrong, because one day, on that black rock, in the middle of nowhere the Roman Empire cared about, this old man is going to fall on his face before something so overwhelming he cannot stand. His body will collapse before his mind can process what his eyes are seeing. And in that moment, the moment he is certain he is about to die, he is going to hear 2 words. The same 2 words. The exact same 2 words that have been spoken, again and again, across 2,000 years of terrified human beings. We will get to him, but not yet. Here's what you need to understand first. This is not a story about a number some pastor counted on a spreadsheet. This is not a phrase you cross-stitch onto a pillow and hang in a hallway. This is not a Bible trivia fact you memorize for Sunday school and forget by Tuesday. This is about the 2 words God says over and over to a person standing at the very edge of collapse. About what happens in the exact second before your whole life falls apart. You have felt that second. You know the one. The phone ringing at an hour phones should not ring. The silence after a doctor stops talking. The moment your body knows something your mind has not caught up to yet. Every person you're about to meet felt it too. A father with a knife raised over his own son. A mother alone in a desert with a dying child. A farmer hiding from an army. A teenage girl about to be accused of something that could get her killed. Men on a boat watching a figure walk toward them on water that should not hold a human weight. And in every single one of those moments, everyone, the same voice showed up and said the same thing to them that it wants to say to you. Stay with me. You are about to hear it for yourself. Let's go back to the beginning. Not the beginning of the Bible, the beginning of the pattern. A man named Abram is standing in a field, and behind him is a battlefield he has no business surviving. He just took on 4 kings and their armies to rescue his nephew with nothing but 318 servants and the element of surprise. He won. He should be celebrating. Instead, he's afraid. Think about that for a second. When you're the kind of man who just fought 4 kings, you start wondering who's coming for you next. You'd be doing the math too, counting enemies, counting odds, wondering if tonight is the night it finally catches up with you. That night, the word of the Lord comes to Abram in a vision, and the first thing God says to him is not well done. It's not congratulations. It's 2 words, fear not. I am your shield, God tells him. Your reward will be very great. A shield, not a strategy, not an army, a person standing between Abram and everything that wants to hurt him. This is the first time in the entire Bible that God says these words to a human being, and he says them to a man who just won a war and still couldn't sleep at night. Here's what most people miss. Fear didn't show up because Abram was weak. Fear showed up because Abram was paying attention. He understood exactly how exposed he was, and God didn't correct him for feeling that. God simply told him he wasn't standing there alone. If you've ever lain awake running through every worst-case scenario your mind could invent, you already know exactly what Abram felt that night. Hold that thought, because the next person you meet doesn't get to walk away with a victory behind her. She gets nothing. Her name is Hagar. She's an Egyptian servant cast out of Abraham's household with her son Ishmael, and now she's wandering the wilderness of Beersheba with no water and no plan. The water runs out. She does what every mother in that position would do. She puts her son under a bush, walks away, and sits down to wait for him to die, because she cannot watch it happen up close. You don't get faith working out neatly here. You don't get a woman who trusted God the whole way through. You don't get a soundtrack swelling underneath her. You get a mother, alone, listening to her child cry with nothing left to give him. And that's when the angel of God calls to her. Not to Abraham, not to Sarah, to her. "What troubles you, Hagar?" the voice asks. "Do not be afraid." God has heard the boy crying, right where he is. Right where he is. Not somewhere better, not somewhere safer. Exactly where the worst thing was happening. If you are in the middle of your own worst thing right now, notice that detail. It matters more than you think. But it gets stranger, because the next man in this pattern isn't suffering at all. He's hiding. His name is Gideon, and he is threshing wheat inside a winepress. Not because that's where wheat belongs, but because the Midianites have been raiding his people for 7 years. And if you're seen out in the open with grain, you lose it. So Gideon works in secret, terrified, when an angel of the Lord sits down under a nearby tree and says something that should be encouraging. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon doesn't feel mighty. He feels abandoned. If the Lord is with us, he says, then why has all this happened to us? You might have asked that exact question yourself. Where were you when this fell apart? Why didn't you stop it? The angel doesn't argue with him. The angel commissions him. And Gideon, now certain he has just seen the face of God and is therefore about to die, panics. That's when he hears it. "Peace be to you. Do not fear, you will not die." A war hero, a grieving mother, a frightened farmer in hiding. 3 completely different lives, 3 completely different disasters, and one voice showing up in the exact center of the wreckage every time. 3 men and women, 3 completely different kinds of disaster, and already you can see it forming. The pattern underneath the pattern, terror comes first, every time. Then the voice, then the same 2 words. Not calm down, not toughen up, not you'll be fine, fear not. Said to a man standing over a battlefield. Said to a mother with an empty water jug. Said to a farmer hiding in a wine press. And we are barely getting started. If this is landing for you, if you're starting to feel something in this bigger than a Bible study, hit subscribe because it's about to get a lot more personal. What happens next involves an old priest struck silent in a temple, a teenage girl facing a death sentence for something she didn't do, and a group of men the entire region considered too disreputable to trust. Keep watching. An old priest named Zechariah is standing inside the temple in Jerusalem, doing the one job he's done 100 times before, burning incense at the altar while the congregation waits outside. Nothing about this day should be different. Then he looks up, and an angel is standing to the right of the altar. Not in a dream, not in a vision. Standing there in the smoke, in the middle of a normal Tuesday. Luke tells us exactly what happens next. Zechariah is terrified. Not startled, not surprised. Terrified. The Greek word underneath it is tarasso, the kind of fear that shakes a person down to the foundation, and Gabriel's first words to him are the ones you've now heard 3 times already. Do not be afraid. Here's the part nobody tells you. Zechariah's fear wasn't irrational. He was an old man, being told his equally old childless wife was about to have a son who would prepare the way for the Messiah. That's not comforting news. That's news too big to hold. You'd struggle to process it too, standing in that smoke, at his age. Now watch what happens next, because the stakes are about to climb from one family's miracle to the fate of the entire world. There's a small hill town in the region of Galilee that mattered to almost nobody. Historians like Josephus barely mention it. It had no fortress, no marketplace worth writing home about, no reason for anyone important to ever visit. Its name was Nazareth, and in a one-room house in that town, a girl is sitting on a low stool, mending a garment. She is young enough that in her culture, marriage negotiations were already underway, young enough that everything about her future was supposed to be small and predictable. Her name is Mary. The angel Gabriel appears to her, and the first thing he tells her, before the part about being favored, before the part about a son, before any of it, is the same 2 words. Do not be afraid. Think about what she's actually facing. You would too in her place. An unexplained pregnancy in a small town, in a culture where that could mean public shame or worse. A betrothed woman found pregnant by someone other than her intended could be stoned under the law. This is not a fairy tale moment. This is a teenage girl being told she is about to carry the weight of the entire world's rescue plan. in a body that could be destroyed by gossip before the child is even born. She doesn't get a guarantee that it'll be easy. She gets 6 words in return. Let it be to me according to your word. 6 words. That's all it took to change history. There's one more thing. The same night, or close to it historically, in the fields outside Bethlehem, a group of shepherds are doing the least respected job in Judean society. Jewish tradition at the time viewed shepherds with suspicion, assumed to be dishonest, assumed to be grazing other people's land. Nobody expected news from heaven to come to men like this. You wouldn't have expected it either. But it does. The glory of the Lord breaks open the night sky. And they are terrified, not nervous, not startled, genuinely terrified, the kind of fear that drops men to the ground. And the angel says it again. Do not be afraid, for I bring you good news of great joy. The lowest status men in the region become the first people on earth to hear that the rescue has arrived. Not the priests, not the political leaders, shepherds in a field, in the dark, shaking with fear one moment and running toward Bethlehem the next. A priest, a teenage girl, a group of shepherds. The stakes just went from one family's future to the future of everyone. And the voice never changes. It just keeps showing up in the dark, in the fear, in the moment right before everything changes for you. The stakes have climbed from a battlefield to a wilderness, to a hiding place, to a temple, to a small house in Nazareth, to a field full of shepherds. Now imagine the highest stakes yet. 12 men in a boat, in the dark, in a storm that should be killing them. It's the middle of the night on the Sea of Galilee, and the wind has turned the water violent. The disciples have been rowing for hours, getting nowhere, exhausted and afraid, when they see something that should not exist. A figure walking toward them on top of the waves. They don't think angel, they think ghost. Matthew tells us they cried out in fear, the same Greek root, phobio, that shows up every single time in this pattern. And through the wind and the spray, a voice reaches them. Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. It's Jesus, walking on water that should not hold a human body, toward men who are certain they're about to die in a storm, saying the same 2 words that were said to a mother in a desert and a farmer in hiding. Notice something here you might have missed. The storm doesn't stop the second he speaks. The fear doesn't evaporate on contact. The voice comes first, in the middle of the wind, in the middle of the terror, before anything gets calm. You know that feeling. The waiting room at 3 in the morning, machines humming. A chair that was never built for sleeping in, and no idea what the next sentence out of a doctor's mouth is going to be. Nothing about that moment is calm. Nothing about that moment feels safe. And yet, that is exactly the kind of moment this voice has always chosen to show up inside of. Your moment, not just theirs. You don't get fear disappearing here. You don't get storms that stop right on cue. You don't get problems solved the second you pray. You get a voice that walks toward you in the middle of the wreckage, before the wreckage is cleaned up. Now, finally, you go back with me to the rock in the Aegean Sea. Decades have passed. The old man who once fished on the Sea of Galilee is now exiled on the island of Patmos, alone, likely sent there under the persecution of the Roman Emperor Domitian. The church historian Eusebius records this tradition. His name is John, and he is the last living person who walked beside Jesus in the flesh. And on this island, on an ordinary Sunday, John turns around because he hears a voice like a trumpet behind him, and there, standing in light too bright to look at directly, is the risen Christ. The same man John watched die, the same man John watched breathe again 3 days later, now revealed in a form John has no framework for. John falls at his feet, not kneeling, falling, collapsing like a man whose legs simply stop working. He describes himself as being like a dead man. And then a hand touches him, and a voice says the words you've now heard 8 times over the course of this video. Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, the voice tells him. The same voice that spoke to Abraham after a battle. The same voice that spoke to Hagar in a wilderness. The same voice that spoke to a farmer hiding in a winepress, a priest struck silent in a temple, a teenage girl facing shame, shepherds shaking in a field, and 12 terrified men in a boat. That voice is now standing in front of an old exile on a rock nobody in the empire cared about, saying it one more time. It is the same voice you have been listening for this entire time, whether you knew it or not. 2 words, from a battlefield to a boat to a barren island. The pattern never broke, not once. So here's what all of this actually means for you. The first thing you need to understand is this: God's response to human fear was never an afterthought. It's not comfort added on at the end, once your situation gets fixed. Every single time, the words come before the resolution. To Abraham, before he knew his family would survive. To Hagar, before the well appeared in the wilderness. To Gideon, before a single battle was fought. To Mary, before she knew how any of it would actually work out. The voice always shows up first, for you too. The second thing is more personal. You don't have to stop being afraid to be spoken to. Zechariah was still terrified when he heard those words. The shepherds were still shaking. The disciples were still gripping the sides of that boat. Fear and faith were never opposites in any of these lives. They were standing in the same room, at the same time, in almost every person you've just watched. If you're afraid right now of something you haven't told anyone about, that doesn't disqualify you from any of this. It puts you in exactly the right place to hear it. And the third thing, the one I want you to sit with after this video ends, is this: the same voice that spoke to a dying mother in a desert, and a farmer hiding from an army, and a girl who could have lost everything, and an old man collapsed on a rock in the middle of the sea. That voice is not done talking. It never ended in Revelation chapter 1. It is still walking toward boats in storms. It is still standing beside hospital beds at 3 in the morning. It is still finding people in the exact center of their worst moment and saying the same 2 words it has said to you for 2,000 years. So tell me, out of everything you just watched, which fear not moment hit you the hardest? Hagar in the wilderness, Mary in Nazareth, John on that rock? Tell me below, because I read every single one of your answers. Because if history has shown us anything, it's this: your fear is never the end of the story. It's just the place where the voice finds you.